You're listening to the Caramel Apples Podcast, an apple snack that dials up thoughtful, heartwarming nostalgia of all things great and retro in the golden era of pop culture and beyond, with your hosts Kennedy Rizzo and Cooper Lee.
Boy, do we have a sweet treat for you guys this week, our loyal Orchard Archivers. It's really been a long time coming in deep diving into some of the fascinating details and backstory on a few of the greats when it comes to the most unforgettable characters.
Oh, there's a good word right there.
Yes, characters of the WWF. Old school edition. But this week will also no doubt please a number of our dear listeners as we talk about the ornery, trash-talking Roddy Piper.
Now, we literally have a lot to say and share with you archivers this week about Roddy Piper.
There's that name.
So let's not waste any time and get right to it. This ornery...
Good word!
Yeah. Enjoyable hot mess came into the world as Roderick George Toombs on April 17th, 1954. He was a Canadian actor, but also, as the true focus of our episode this week, he was both an amateur and professional wrestler, better known as by his stage name or ring name as Roddy. Okay, let me try that again. Roddy Piper.
That is a tongue twister because, you're in the middle of a conversation. It never does seem to come out right. It's crazy.
Yes, even if you do say it right, you're like, did I say
it right? I know, right? Oh, my goodness. But, this shows the fun that's already setting up for this week's discussion. So it's going to be great.
Yes, it is.
Well, I'm so ready to do this fascinating character, Coop. And especially fresh off our recent season finale episode of the collective entity of WWF.
Mm-hmm.
So Roddy Piper was mostly known and recognized globally for his contributions and connection with both the WCW, which is the World Championship Wrestling, as well as the WWF, World Wrestling Federation. Most notably between the key year bracket of 1984 through 2000.
So, fun fact, did you know that Roddy Piper was Canadian Scottish?
I don't know. Whatever could have given that away? You're like, all right, smarty pants.
Yeah. Well, being a true Canadian, or Canuck, he hails from Saskatoon, Canada. But if you remember and are even remotely familiar with Roddy Piper and his get up back in his heyday, you'll recall that he'd wear his infamous Scottish heritage. He'd often display his ever entertaining trademark short fuse, his hot-headed temper, if you will, his quick-witted spontaneity. This right here is the absolute best.
Yes.
He can literally watch a lot of these older retro videos of him doing his very thing for hours. It's just that good.
He was so good at it. He had an emergency package with him at all times. I got my extra ornery with me for whatever occasion arises. That's so bad.
Yes, never in short supply. Kennage, I've heard this about Roddy Piper, quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
He really had some crazy, unforgettable gimmicks throughout his time wrestling. But what impresses me most about Roddy Piper was he really seemed like a good and most loyal guy off camera to his family and friends, but also to his throngs of fans.
So true, Coop. But those fans gobbled up the numerous crazy antics of Rowdy Roddy Piper.
Yes, they did.
And the fans have spoken, and Roddy obliged them. So, embracing the role as a heel, he readily gave the tried and true fans what they wanted. Each time he'd go into mode, whipping his diehard fans into a frenzy with his finger pointing, shouting verbal attacks, and ushering in dirty tactics with his rivals.
So, according to one of the popular news media outlets, they deemed and branded Roddy Piper by many,
and by hubby hubs,
yes, to be the greatest heel wrestler of all time. That's simply amazing.
It really is. And Roddy Piper was a character in every sense of the word.
Roddy Piper. Later on in this program, I know that you've accepted the challenge of the Tonga Kid, and you're going to be meeting him right here in front of a national television audience. But in the meantime...
Nothing. He's garbage. He's like where he comes from.
Please.
Nothing but garbage where he comes from. Same thing with your world's heavyweight champion. You're talking garbage. This guy comes out 280 pounds, and all of a sudden, everybody in Boston is standing up and cheering and talking about Hulkamania. Hot Rod walked out, and all of a sudden, everybody's booing, thinking Hot Rod ain't going to stand no chance. After all, Hot Rod, he's the only guy. All he's ever done was actually destroy Jimmy Snuka, legend. All he's ever done is actually destroy Andre the Giant. Unless someone was to sucker me, they could never get an even shot at me. I bounced the world on my little fingertips. And then all of a sudden, Hot Rod goes into Boston, and he becomes victorious. I actually beat the champion, but no, you don't want to give me the belt. No. Let me tell you something, mister. I am the boss. I'm the one that's going back in there for the rematch. Not because I won it. Because the champion won it. Because I made him look like a fool. They raised my hand. I'm the first man to ever beat the champion. I am the champion. Boston.
Thank you very much, Roddy Piper.
I am the
Fans,
true
stay tuned. More action after this. Take his blood.
I mean, I know the fans are shocked. But that was Roddy Piper, that craziness. But off stage, Roddy Piper was just a laid back, deeply sincere, easygoing guy and devoted family man.
Wow.
So, yeah, and I think that's cool too, because that shows how good a lot of these guys, flick the switch on and off for what they needed to do versus their life.
Yeah, their performances, it was separate. Yeah.
Totally. And many have witnessed this fact via many fascinating interviews or media appearances he's made. So Roddy was very likable. He seemed like he was a very stand-up guy that so resonated with those that were drawn to him. So you gotta love Roddy Piper on the in-week wrestling segments designated for the summer months, which was called Primetime Wrestling. Oh my goodness, I've seen clips of this. This is absolutely nuts.
Oh no.
It's nuts. And it was hosted by none other than Gorilla Monsoon. So he'd have on there like Rick Rude, and then there was Bobby the Brain Heenan, which all throughout our Apple Snacks, even the WWF, this name has come up an awful lot. Like, this guy was a hot mess, right?
Yes.
And Roddy thought he was a hot mess because he nicknamed him Boobsy. And he didn't like it, but what could he do? I mean, Roddy was like, I gotcha, so you just keep using it. And Boobsy,
he just had to embrace it finally, probably.
Yeah, because he wasn't going to stop. Roddy's like, I got you where I want you. But they'd all be sitting there fussing and fighting and trash talking each other. So the main group would be out on the main stage, and they would call that Studio A. This is great. Like, and you could tell it was a set. I mean, it was just so 80s and whatever. And usually Gorilla Monsoon was out there, and he'd do the, interviewing who's coming on, who was going to have the matches they were going to showcase. And then you'd have like Rick Rude, Boobsy. They'd be out in Studio A. Well, then you'd have residual ornery mess happening in Studio B, which I seriously called that timeout, because who's always there? It was Roddy. Roddy Piper. And he hated it, but he couldn't get out. It was like he was in a cage, right?
Right.
And he'd be in there, he'd be sitting there fine. And they'd say his name, poop, like a firecracker, like a little spark. He'd be, oh, he'd get all upset. And then they'd get so mad, he'd run out of there and they'd run and meet each other. Like they'd go to each other's studios. Just making trouble. It's so much fun, but it's good fun. I don't know. I love it. I can sit and watch that mess for hours.
And when you mentioned Studio A and then Studio B did just sound like that's bad news.
Studio B, Studio Bad News. The prison cell of the set. I love it.
Crazy. So in his early days, back in 1979, Roddy Piper dipped his toes in the pond of wrestling when he wrestled in 5 matches at Madison Square Garden under Vince McMahon Sr. So it's in some of these earlier events that we start seeing the on-ring that began blossoming into the rowdy Roddy Piper we've come to predictably respect and love. So, fun fact, did you know that just before one of those matches, well-known opponent Classy Freddie Blassie stuffed Roddy Piper's bagpipes with, get this, toilet paper.
Oh my goodness. That is rotten sauce.
I know, right? And this was done so that Roddy's bagpipes wouldn't play in front of the crowd there.
Again, that is totally rotten. Oh my gosh.
So we just mentioned how Roddy Piper got rolling in the realm of wrestling back when under the direction of Vince McMahon Sr. Was heading things off. So another twist on his wrestling track or journey is that a few years later, in 1983, the new WWF owner, Vince McMahon Jr., got in touch with Roddy Piper, who at the time insisted he finish out his contract with his original owner and connection before the McMahons, and that was Jimmy Crockett.
Okay.
So now we see that Roddy was a good guy and loyal. So that's really cool. Because even though we can put 2 and 2 together and deduce that offer from the McMahons probably had some serious high dollars waving at him.
Yes.
The fact he just not going to do it. Not at that time. That's cool.
Yeah, and like you said, this is big dollars on the line. So that really is a testament to his character. I mean, obviously, we know how it turned out after a few years passed. But I mean, he wasn't so greedy and quick to jump on that before cutting ties with his previous connection.
Yeah, because there's a lot of people who will burn bridges in their wake. They're they just can't get their heads wrapped around that loyalty aspect, or at least don't cut off your nose, spite your face. You never know how things are going to end up, and he might have had to come crawling back to this guy, and if he had left him in the dust, that might not have worked out too well. So
yeah, and there's so much more about Roddy Piper we just could not fit into this episode, but like he really had a hard way to go coming up and stuff, and like there was a lot of stuff he had to deal with. So the fact that he still was a stand-up character, his personality, like he really could have been mad at the world. I mean, he played a good part, but I mean, literally, he could have been mad at the world and reacted to that, but he didn't. He just rose above it and was a good guy. He did what he had to do, and he still entertained us. So I mean, yeah, Archivers, if you guys are really fans of his, the stories about him, but seriously, like he's just for that part of his, his stance and what's going on, like mad respect.
Nice.
So, but yeah, so you need to research that. It's great. It's fascinating stuff. He's awesome. But so back to what we got for you. We're gonna jump to the year 1984.
Okay.
And Roddy Piper made good on his previous contract, as we just mentioned, and was then effortlessly thrust into the world of WWF. So he did eventually take the second offer, the big dollars. Okay, so he's human. He's still human. Come on now.
Yeah, he's like, I gotta pay the bills.
That's right. He had a family.
So he did take that offer. Fun fact: it is said that Roddy fueled the sport's electrifying transformation from a niche curiosity into a mainstream attraction.
Facts.
With his gift of gab, he became the proud host of his very own wrestling segment talk show called Piper's Pit.
Oh, here we go.
Where all too often the featured interviews became contentious, with a notable example of such we'll cover here momentarily. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh is right. I just love talking about this, Coop. This is awesome entertainment. I mean, being pure retro gold. I mean, this is just A1A stuff. So now that he's officially signed with the WWF, he had to ease in due to some extenuating circumstances. Roddy Piper came on board as a manager due to some injuries he suffered as an unfortunate result of his earlier matches.
Oh.
But then that stint, it ended on the DL, so he did this all quiet, which then he launched into what we know him as in the WWF. So when he went into full-time wrestling after he got all that other stuff taken care of.
Okay.
So now we hear the bell ring. Ding, ding, ding!
What did they say? Wrestle smarter, not harder. So yeah, those injuries probably came back to bite him pretty quick.
Yes, I imagine.
So moments ago, we mentioned that Roddy Piper was given his own personal interview segment called Piper's Pit on Championship Wrestling and Wrestling at the Chase from 1984 to 1987. That had a good 3-year run. Oh my goodness. During a Piper's Pit interview, Roddy made a retro snapshot of one of the all-time shocking TV entertainment moments in history when he had fellow rival opponent on the show, Jimmy Superfly Snuka.
Oh boy.
Yeah. It started out bad when Roddy Piper stooped low, insulting his heritage, because Snuka is Polynesian. But as if things weren't already good, well, I should say going bad. Very well going bad. Things took a turn for the worse when Roddy attacked Snuka by, get this, smashing him over the head with a coconut.
Gosh.
So next time when he wants to make a pina colada, let's keep all the ingredients in the blender, shall we? So people can enjoy it.
That's 100% rotten sauce. Oh my goodness. My hubby totally remembers this shocking segment of Piper's Pit because this, Roddy Piper, was his actually favorite wrestler of all time.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, he was definitely a fan. And that strong Scottish heritage can really bring out the heat.
Yeah, you would know something about that, you and your hubby.
Yes. But just real quick about what he told me, what he shared, because he did remember seeing this, but Snuka, they were acting, they were playing, but he did get hurt.
Oh no.
Yeah, so his Jimmy Superfly Snuka, his career kind of did a downward slide after because of his health. He was injured
from that segment.
Yeah, he got hurt pretty bad. It knocked him out cold.
Oh no.
Yeah, so it was just hard for him. He just slowly slid. He was a lot of people. People were fans of his. They loved him. But he never really got it back, it took a toll on his career as well. So
oh wow. Well, yeah. It's probably good he got out when he did, because obviously it can go real bad real quick. So he's fortunate probably to just have that happen.
Yeah. He still has a legacy because there's a lot of fans of Jimmy Superfly Snuka, so great.
But that is truly awful. So we just relayed this one shocking moment and its antics between Roddy Piper and an opponent that of Jimmy Superfly Snuka.
Mm-hmm.
But did you know that there was yet another instance involving a heated exchange during an infamous Piper's Pit segment?
Yeah.
Well, there was. So, fun fact, the second interaction to note between Roddy Piper and an opponent, that interviewed segment was with none other than Andre the Giant.
All right.
Yes, the interview went from zero to ugly with quickness.
Oh no.
Where Andre the Giant had had enough of Roddy and his trash talking, Andre hoisted his host in the air and literally flung Roddy. Oh boy.
Oh, boy is right.
He
Oh,
was
wow.
making these giant statements and he made him look very miniature in a second.
You know, Coop, old Roddy is a firecracker.
Oh my goodness.
And he doesn't know when to quit, apparently. But, you know, we can see that he was not shy by any stretch of the imagination. He was always up for a challenge.
Yes.
You know, just another example of one more of his classic ornery shenanigans. He was good at insulting other rivals.
Yes, he was.
One of those rivals, and the Orchard archivers might remember this name. His name is Bruno Sammartino, and he also was a guest on Piper's Pit. And this led to a feud. Yes, a feud that ended in a steel cage match, which, get this.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh is right. Roddy lost. So,
what?
On his show, he got in this match and lost.
Rowdy Roddy Piper. Now, as with most of the pro wrestlers connected to WWF WrestleMania, they had their day or two to tussle with, predictably enough, Hulk Hogan, who is pretty much the king of all kings of pro wrestling.
King the Car!
So we won't go long on Hulk Hogan, but in all reality, since he was such a huge mainstay with this particular sport realm, you'll effortlessly hear or remember so much of how prominent his connection was with so many notable wrestlers. So you'll hear his name a lot.
Facts. So what else do you have there, Coop, on Rowdy Roddy Piper?
Funny you should ask, Kennedy. So, fun fact, did you know that Roddy Piper also had a major storyline involving another nostalgic 80s pop icon, Cyndi Lauper?
Now, actually, I did know about that one thanks to the Hubby Hubs. So I did realize this one, but I guess you can call me a cheater for that. Forgive me later.
It's okay.
But in 1985, MTV presented The War to Settle the Score, which was the main event between Roddy Piper and Hulk Hogan. The Hulk Hogan was accompanied by, here we go, according to the fun fact you just dropped there, Coop, that none other than Cyndi Lauper, Captain Lou Albano, and Mr. T. Okay, so the connection with Cyndi and Captain Lou Albano and Mr. T, they are all good friends. But my hubby hubs, he thought he remembered. So I'm not sure on this, and maybe the archivers can help us. But he thought that Cyndi Lauper and Dr. Captain Lou Albano was father and daughter.
Aha.
Yeah, and he was sure, he thought that's what it was, but then I saw in research that they were only just friends. So I don't know if that's a thing and they don't want that out there, like they're just trying to move on past that, to have their own separate careers, or if they really related. I don't know.
Yeah. I honestly actually vaguely remember that too from back then.
Okay.
Thinking that I had heard that. So maybe it was just one of those wild tales that just grew legs, or there was some truth. I don't know, but we obviously didn't know your husband when we were growing up, so
right.
To have those recollections, it had to be popular enough.
Yeah, so let's put that out there for our Orchard archivers. Do any of you hardcore fans know the skinny on this? Like, help us out, set it straight, because we're kind of new to the game on this wrestling thing. We love it, but we want to definitely make sure what we know about it is as correct as possible. So
Right?
help us out, archivers. Let us know what your thoughts are on that.
Yes, yes. There's a lot of twists and turns in the exciting realm of pro wrestling for reals.
Oh, truly, you said it. So this grand event set up with Roddy Piper, Hulk Hogan, Captain Lou Albano, and Mr. T became the very first ever WrestleMania. So WrestleMania also pitted Paul Orndorff and Roddy Piper.
Orndorff was previous manager.
That's right. That's right. So against or versus Hulk Hogan and Mr. T. So yeah. So now we've got Paul Orndorff, Roddy Piper against Hulk Hogan and Mr. T.
So Paul Orndorff was pinned by Hulk Hogan when
oh goodness, here we go.
Roddy's bodyguard, Cowboy Bob Orton, intervened and mistakenly struck Orndorff instead of Hulk Hogan.
Oopsie, that's an ugly mistake, wouldn't you agree?
Totally.
Oh. So Roddy Piper and Mr. T were once again among the main attractions of the following year's WrestleMania 2. In 1986, their boxing match ended in Roddy Piper's disqualification for body slamming his opponent, Mr. T. They did not call him Hot Rod for nothing.
Good old Hot Rod. Intent was always delivering a good show, as he's proven time and time again, all throughout his colorful career. So, fun fact, as noted in Roddy Piper's dedicated focus on his career and his life presented by WWE, entitled Born to Controversy, Hot Rod reflected how during the match that we had just discussed, where he had to occupy Mr. T in order to cover for Mr. T's wrestling ability, or lack thereof, from being observed by the fans. So it's apparent, as well as contractual, that Roddy had to take one for the team. So I'm curious on how he really might have felt about this.
Okay, so I got a little insight on this too.
Ooh, spill the tea.
Yeah, I guess Roddy, they actually didn't get along.
Oh, him and Mr. T? Okay.
He always kind of accused him of being, like, he got a segue into wrestling due to his acting, Mr. T's acting and connection. Yeah, and he's like, you're not a real wrestler kind of thing. Like, you're taking away from us because you're not a real wrestler. You kind of got the red carpet in. And then having to do this stunt for him. I mean, like, he's probably like, hey, why are we cutting this guy some slack? You need to come in here and show your skill, show your stuff. We shouldn't have to be, treating this thing with kid gloves. This is WrestleMania, for goodness sakes,
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
So, he didn't hate him, but he wasn't his favorite person either. So, it's interesting, you express curiosity on that, because, it's actually where a real life hostile relationship and tense launched between the two of them. So, this led fans to conclude that this brewing feud would be best played out on screen. So they were good at that. Yeah. So Roddy Piper loved to spark flames at anyone if provided the opportunity. This is known facts. And he really embraced being the heel role like no other.
You don't say.
You're still hurting Roddy Piper.
I'm not hurting.
How in the world, against the doctor's advice, can you go out in that ring and meet the Iron Sheik?
I do exactly what I want to do. You say I'm insane. I say, thank you very much. Adrian Adonis, do you think I'm insane? Do you think for 1 second now you running around with your dress on and your beautiful pectorals that look like you had 6 litters of puppies, you're going to come run in a ring and you're going to come run around and mess me up and think for 1 second that I'm just going to sit there and take him and knock him out there and beat you to a pulp? You think for 1 second, you in all your splendid glory with your pretty little hat on and all those lovely stretch marks, that look like an upstate map of New York, that you're going to sit there and say, took care of Roddy Piper. Listen, I'm a man. You think something like a knee injury is gonna hurt me or stop me, huh? You think that's what I'm made of? You can break my neck. I fight for a living. When you carry a big stick, Gene, you don't gotta walk so soft no more, When you carry a big stick, I'll what?
I thank you very much, Roddy Piper. In my opinion, you jeopardized your career in meeting the Iron Sheik, but you did get your hand raised. Our congratulations
That's
on
why
that.
I'm Roddy Piper, and you're not.
All right, back to you, Vince.
So I'm going to share this, and it's just shocking how seriously disturbed and disconnected from reality some fans or people looking on, how they took it, what Piper played out concerning his public image. But Roddy Piper's convincing performance as an A1A jerk heel actually led to multiple attempts on his life.
Mm-hmm.
He was stabbed 3 different times. The third time or attempt, Roddy revealed, was actually an inch from his heart.
Whoa.
That's serious.
Yeah, that's out of bounds, like you said. My goodness.
Yeah.
Coop, folks be way too intense over seemingly nothing matters.
Yeah. Here's an unfortunate example of people taking what they see on screen way too seriously, and this was back when.
Yeah, and it's much more of a problem now in current times.
Yeah.
With the whole imbalance folks thing.
Mm-hmm.
And really, that stupidity could have led to unnecessary tragedy for Roddy Piper's longtime wife, Kitty, who was definitely his true love and heart, and their 4 children.
Yeah. That would have been truly senseless for real.
Oh, yeah.
Fun fact. We just revealed that Roddy Piper had 4 children. Well, did you know that 2 of the Hall of Famers' children have followed their legendary father's footsteps and entered also into the realm of pro wrestling? Their names are Colt and Teal Toombs.
That is so cool to hear, and hope they're proudly carrying on their dad's shining legacy as they explore their pro wrestling careers.
Yeah.
Now let's quickly jump back into his, that being Roddy's, into his 80s heyday. So now we're at the year 1987.
Okay.
So back to Piper's Pit. That was the backdrop for yet another one of our favorite pro wrestlers we've recently covered, and we mentioned him a few minutes ago, Andre the Giant.
Mm-hmm.
So Andre challenged Hot Rod's old rival Hulk Hogan for the WWF World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania 3. And lo and behold, Hulk Hogan accepted that challenge. These guys don't play now, do they, Coop?
No.
They're troublemakers. Now, Roddy Piper also had this feud thing going on during this time with Ric Flair as well. Oh, God, Ric Flair.
Woo!
You want to talk about 2 spicy meatballs going at it. And truly, there is a wonderful clip of all this where Nature Boy, he comes into the arena to purposely taunt Roddy Piper.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, Ric Flair, he's all decked out in one of his silky, fancy get-up robes. He had the heavyweight championship belt right along with him. Coop, he makes his ornery way over to Roddy, who was minding his own business. He was over in the booth commentating what was going on in the match.
Oh, goodness.
And sitting in the booth, too, was Macho Man and Vince McMahon Jr. They were all 3 of them sitting up there. So you go, what happened?
Yeah, what happened?
Okay, long story short, Ric Flair took to a folding chair. Okay. And he was whacking Roddy Piper over and over with it on his head, everywhere, knocked him out cold.
What?
He did. Roddy was fine. Roddy was doing it. He was minding his own business, like these kids in the play yard, like, that's my toy. They go over there, punch each other, poking each other in the eye.
Oh, my goodness.
A literal folding chair. He took it, picked it up, and smashes him with it.
God.
So then he's swinging this folding chair, and he residually managed to hit Vince McMahon.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, and Coop, the crowd lost their minds. They lost it. I mean, they enjoyed and supported every bit of that ornery display. They loved it.
Goodness gracious.
That's just rotten sauce, Coop. Oh no, this is prime grade A entertainment.
You know, it does clearly sound like an entertaining hot mess.
Good expression.
We'll have to watch that clip after we're done with our apple snack today.
Deal.
Because talk about some good fun, right? That
Oh,
right
yeah.
there. So, although their feuding energy was very apparent in Raw, you'd never know that in reality. Because like Piper and Ric Flair really were good friends behind the cameras and theatrics.
Imagine that.
Yeah. But again, because their acting chops were so good, you'd never know this fact due to the camera heat, that they would put on regular display. That is just truly amazing stuff.
It is, because you're watching legends at work back in the retro good old days of pro wrestling.
Yeah. So Kennedy, when you think of these crazy awesome wrestling matches, the chemistry and such, well, situations like this is how you draw heat.
Facts. Oh my goodness. Like when you put some good crowd manipulators together, well, let the games begin.
Oh my goodness. The good old days of the WWF and WrestleMania. Hot Rod, Mach, and Nacho. Oh.
That's cute. He is a nacho boy.
Oh my god.
I think you ruffled his fuzz on that one.
Drizzling some cheese sauce on him. And Nature Boy. And so many more were truly pivotal characters that made wrestling great, as we've seen here on our podcast over the last few weeks. Mm-hmm. That back in the early days of pro wrestling was hands down the best era of wrestling.
I so agree with you, Coop. I mean, it's just like most things we talk about in comparison to today to then.
Yeah.
I mean, those guys back then, they were masters at creating real looking tension.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this applies to all aspects of it, but this angle right here really takes me back to like what we talked about at the beginning of our episode this week, that weekly segment in the summer, primetime wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Those segments that were hosted by Gorilla Monsoon. I mean, just him sitting there behind the counter, he had these big old black glasses on. And like, that's all he did. I think he was a wrestler. I'm not certainly familiar with him.
Okay.
The Hubs knew about him. He filled me in. So I have yet to see him in anything except this. And but he would just sit there with his glasses on. He looked like one of the three blind mice. The only expression you'd see is maybe occasionally his eyebrows going up over the sunglasses to know if he's mad or whatever. But pure raw live action entertainment readily ensued when these great wrestlers were showcased on there in other matches,
Yeah.
Think about Rick Rude, and then you got Bobby the Brain Heenan again, Boobsy. And then they had the whole setup with the Studio A, Studio B. And
yeah.
Just, I don't know, it just like came together. It was so natural, I mean, they just brought it. They brought what they came to do, and you could sit back and enjoy, it was crazy.
Yeah.
And then Roddy, he's in his element. Hot Rod, he'd get up there screaming insults and taunts to the guests like constantly. Hence his permanent pass and timeout, Studio B. But that brought to us, the fans, nothing but sheer joy, lots of laugh and entertainment whenever you chose to tune in. It was a win-win.
Yes. Yeah, because they're like, well, as long as Roddy's in Studio B, we can always just cut the feed when he's getting too much.
Oh my gosh.
So talk about a high level of commitment and dedication to the cause,
Yeah, because again, we can't say it enough. Wrestlers back then were larger than life characters versus or compared to what wrestler world is now.
Yes.
I mean, it's sadly far different.
Yeah.
I mean, they might have some eye candy in there, but they don't have, it's not the same like it was back in the 80s. It wasn't.
And we've unfortunately have witnessed this development sadly in other areas of entertainment and TV shows, music, movies.
Yeah, because the key element being that the storylines are lacking. And as you just stated, Coop, it's apparent that the norm nowadays is just this this
Yeah.
new version of wrestling where you got the same old lame script and that equals lack of storylines and personality of whatever wrestler they're showcasing. It's just not the same.
Right. It's like they take, you had Tang and you have orange juice. Okay, Tang is, it's dehydrated. You just add water. It's not going to be like freshly squeezed orange juice.
Good analogy.
It's just, that's how it is. They just add water to this stuff and expect it to be the same as what it was before. It's like, no, it's different.
Yeah.
And this is why we are so grateful for our glorious nostalgic memories of pro wrestling. And we're equally grateful that Roddy Piper was a key mainstay in that specific nostalgia.
Oh, he most certainly was, Coop. And he's certainly a total favorite of so many hardcore retro fans out there. I mean, like, this is how many years later, and we're looking up clips on social media and loving it.
Right.
And I'm glad to say that we're here for it. So, before we wrap up our memorable discussion on Roddy Piper this week, we've got a couple more things to share about expanding career adventures he got into that spun off of his pro wrestling fame. So, would you mind doing the honors there, Coop?
Certainly. Fun fact. During and after his wrestling days, Roddy Piper racked up multiple TV and film credits, starring in various action B movies, and later on doing voice work.
Yeah. I think there was a Saturday morning cartoon version of some of the heavy hitters from WWF around that time. I think Mach was in it. Hot Rod, he was one of them that was hotly featured in the cartoon, and I think he might have voiced himself.
That's just cray.
It is.
I think two of our hubs watched this when they were younger. Mine always liked Junkyard Dog.
Oh, yeah, Junkyard Dog. Okay. That's funny, some of the things they, along with others, were drawn to back then. Speaking of other popular avenues in pop culture back then, like the TV shows and movie angle, speaking of film contributions, probably the most memorable of Roddy Piper's acting gigs was the ever familiar cult classic 1988 sci-fi film They Live.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, that was directed by John Carpenter.
Okay.
I think pretty much a hardcore wrestling fan, they probably watched this movie. So it is here when Roddy uttered his ever famous catchphrase, and I'll gladly PG this.
Okay.
He says, and the fans will know it. They'll know without the PG, so they'll know what this is. He says, I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick butt, and I'm all out of bubblegum. Like, how epic is this line, right?
Oh, that's classic. That's a classic.
Yeah, there's no better words to describe this travesty.
I do exactly what I want to do. I fight for a living. That's why I'm Roddy Piper, and you're not.
That's absolutely rotten sauce Kimmage.
I agree.
So another fun fact, Roddy Piper also started a podcast. Hey! Called Piper's Pit with Roddy Piper in association with Podcast One.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So after a long, high-charge, memorable career, sadly, Piper passed away on July 31st, 2015.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah.
Well, that's fairly recent and so incredibly sad.
Yeah.
He was truly one of the good ones, as we stated before. And He is sorely missed.
Mm-hmm.
He was vividly described as and known for being one of the most entertaining, controversial performers ever.
He was truly a great wrestler, and we'd have to agree, which is why he's one of our all-time caramel apple picks for favorite pro wrestler of all time.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we got to run. Old Roddy said that he was all out of bubble gum.
And he does what he wants to do. That was another crazy clip. Yeah, so may each of their legacies live on. But we are so happy that we were able to cover some of the WrestleMania WWF characters for the last few weeks. And, we look forward to enjoying the summer months. So, thank you, archivers, for always supporting us and tuning into our craziness. We're going to take a break for a few weeks, but we'll be back. More retro goodness. So, be on the lookout. We haven't gone away. We're just going to take a little break. We'll see you then.
Yeah, like she said, we won't say goodbye, but just see you soon.
See you soon. And that's it for this week's Apple Snack. But as you know, there's always more where that came from. So stay tuned. Subscribe, review, and spread the word. See you next time in the Retro Orchard, and thanks so much for listening.